The day a broke black kid found an abandoned sear in the middle of nowhere, what was inside the trunk changed everything. He had not eaten in 24 hours. He had learned to ignore that. Kofi was 11 years old and life had never been gentle with him. His sandals had split clean down the middle weeks ago, and he'd tied them together with wire his mother found by the road. His shirt had a hole near the collar he kept pulling upward. It didn't matter. He walked with the kind of quiet purpose you only see in children who have carried adult problems for too long. Before we continue, tell us in the comments what time it is and where you are watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Now let's get back to our story. The people in his neighborhood had a name for the boy: Trouble Magnet. Not because he was bad, but because bad things always seemed to find him. Lost the scholarship exam on a power cut day. Got blamed when the market stall collapsed in the storm. Always him. Always something. But his mother, Grace, had never once agreed with them. She was lying on a thin mattress when he left that morning, her forehead burning, her smile trying too hard. "Go, baby," she'd whispered, squeezing his wrist. "We'll be fine." She said that every day. He wasn't sure she believed it anymore, but he did, because she needed him to. So Kofi walked into the bush outside the town, the same way he did every few days, hunting for scrap metal. Copper wire. Old pipes. Anything the junkyard man would weigh and pay for. Not for new shoes. Not for himself. For the tablets that kept his mother's fever from turning into something worse. The forest was quiet in a way that felt thick, like the trees were holding their breath. He moved deeper than usual, pushing through a wall of low branches, and that's when he saw it. A car. Not abandoned the way people park and walk off. Abandoned the way something is left to be forgotten. Vines had climbed up the doors and bonnet. Rust had eaten through the roof in patches. The tires were flat and cracked, sunken into the ground like the earth was slowly swallowing it. The windscreen was smashed on one side, the other covered in old mud that had dried and flaked. Kofi stopped walking. He'd grown up hearing stories. Things found in the bush. Police asking questions. Poor boys, no lawyers, wrong place, wrong time. He knew the rules of survival his mother had never spoken but always taught. Don't touch what isn't yours. Don't get involved in things that can bury you. He turned to leave. Then he heard it. Faint. Barely there. Like the sound a radio makes when the signal dies. Not music, not voice, just something trying to be heard. A broken, muffled sound from inside the car. From the trunk. His whole body went still. Could be an animal. He told himself that. A cat. A bird trapped under the metal. But the sound came again, and this time it landed somewhere in his chest he couldn't explain. It wasn't an animal. He knew that the way you know certain things before your brain has finished thinking them. He moved toward the car slowly, eyes scanning the bush around him. No one. Just trees and shadow. The trunk wasn't fully closed. It sat crooked on its hinge, held down by its own weight, a thin gap of darkness along the bottom edge. Kofi crouched, fingers wrapping around the rusted lip. He could feel his pulse in his hands. "Ya Allah," he whispered, the way his mother did whenever something felt too big for her alone. He pulled. The metal groaned loud and awful, the sound splitting through the silence like something screaming. Dust hit his face. A smell came out, damp and old and wrong, like the inside of a room that hadn't seen air in a long time. He covered his nose with his sleeve and forced himself to look. At first his eyes couldn't make sense of what he was seeing. Then the shape became clear. A little girl. She was curled on her side like she'd been folded into the space, knees to her chest, hair plastered to her face, clothes gray with filth and sweat. Her lips were cracked. Her fingers were trembling slightly, the way a body trembles when it has nothing left. Kofi forgot how to breathe. He stood there for what felt like a full minute just staring, unable to move, unable to understand how a child had ended up here, in a boot, in a forest, in the dark. "Hey," he managed. His voice came out croaked and wrong. "Hey, wake up. I'm here." The girl's eyes opened. They were glassy, unfocused, swinging wildly across the sky above her until they landed on his face. What came next cut him open. She flinched, shrinking further into herself like he was something to run from. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said quickly, leaning back to give her space. "I promise. I'm just a kid. Look, I'm just a kid like you. She stared at him. The terror in her eyes didn't disappear, but something underneath it shifted. Like a candle in a dark room, small, uncertain, but there. He could see how thin she was. How light she looked. Like the weeks had taken something from her, piece by piece. He didn't think about scrap metal after that. He didn't think about the junkyard man or the tablet money or anything else. He reached out one hand, slow and careful, and waited. She took it. He helped her out gently, her weight almost nothing in his arms, and when she winced at the brightness of the sky, something inside him broke and rebuilt itself at the same time. He thought of his mother. He thought of how his mother would want him to act. He already knew the answer. "I'll take you home," he said. It wasn't a promise he could fully keep. Home was a single room with damp walls and a leaking ceiling and a sick woman who could barely sit up straight. But right now it was the safest place he knew, and that had to count for something. The walk back felt endless. Her name, he learned slowly, was Sana. She didn't say much. Just walked close beside him, hands still wrapped around his shirt sleeve like she was afraid he'd disappear. He kept looking over his shoulder. Every snapped twig made his heart slam. But the forest gave nothing. No footsteps, no voices. Only silence. When he pushed open the door to their room, his mother looked up from the mattress. "Amy," he said, voice unsteady. "I found someone." Grace stared at the girl. For one long second, Kofi watched the worry move across her face. "We have nothing, we can barely survive." And then something replaced it. Something that looked like a decision being made. "Bring her here," she said softly. She moved her own blanket to the side. With hands shaking from fever, she touched Sana's forehead, then smoothed her hair back the way only a mother knows how. "This child has been scared a long time," she said quietly. "Not to anyone. Just knowing." Kofi brought water in their least cracked cup. Sana drank it like it was the first real thing she'd been offered in days. That night Kofi didn't sleep. He sat by the door with a piece of wood in his hand, listening. Sana woke twice from nightmares, and both times Grace pulled her close and whispered prayers against her hair. He watched his sick mother hold a stranger's child like she'd always been hers, and he couldn't decide if he wanted to cry from sadness or from something that felt like awe. But guilt lived in him too. Sharp and quiet. Because he remembered now. Weeks ago, passing the highway at the edge of the forest. That same car barely visible through the trees. He noticed it, then looked away. She might have been there already. That thought sat heavy on his chest in the dark. She might have been there and I walked past. "I should have checked," he told his mother in the early hours, voice barely above a whisper. "I saw that car before. I didn't look." Grace found his hand in the dark and held it. "Wrong," she said, "is knowing and doing nothing. You acted. You did right today." He held on to that. He made it into a promise. In the morning he walked to the police station with Sana's hand in his, and he told them everything. His voice shook on every third word. The officers watched him with a particular suspicion they kept ready for people who looked like him. Poor, young, no one to vouch for him. He felt that old familiar fear climbing his throat. Then Sana looked up at the officer across the desk and said 4 words. "He saved me." He did. The room changed. Just like that. Calls went out. Within the hour, the story had a shape. Sana had been missing for 9 days. Her family had been searching for 9 days. She was found by a boy who had no reason to stop, and stopped anyway. Her parents arrived like a storm of grief and relief colliding. Her mother couldn't stand. Her father kept reaching for Kofi's hand, pressing it, unable to form sentences. The world is not always unkind. Sometimes it watches a poor boy carry a weight that wasn't his and it pays attention. A journalist wrote one sentence from what Kofi said that afternoon, standing in the car park outside the station, blinking in the light. "No child should be left alone in the dark. It doesn't matter who they are." He didn't mean it as a speech. He meant it the way you mean something when it's true and when it cost you something to learn. But it spread. The way truths sometimes do, quietly at first, then everywhere at once. And somewhere in a small room with a leaking roof, a woman with a fever smiled at her son and said, "I told you. Good hearts don't run out of wealth." He believed her this time. If this story moved you, Share it with someone who needs to be reminded that love makes the world a better place. Drop a comment below. What city are you watching from? Subscribe for more stories that prove love.